So I'm Conor McVeigh. I'm the Supply Chain Director for McDonald's here in the UK. I am delighted to be here today, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about our restaurant operations in the UK and how important our relationships with our farmers, our suppliers are to our supply chain as well as to our overall business. A lot of people will be familiar with the Golden Arches, the brand, but they may not be that familiar with how we operate as a business, the relationships that we have with farmers, with suppliers. So I'm going to explain a little bit, perhaps dispel a few myths, debunk a few myths as well, but then talk a little bit more about how important the pork supply chain is to our business here in the UK. So one thing I really want to share with the audience today is how important partnership is for our business. Partnership with our franchisees, with our suppliers, and with our farmers here in the UK. And share some practical examples about the contribution and the role that they've played to our success here.
Perfect, that's lovely.
Thank you very much, and a very warm and good afternoon to you all. As Mick said, my name's Conor McVeigh. I've been with McDonald's for a little over 3 years. I'm the supply chain director for our business here in the UK and across Ireland. So I've got about 20 minutes if my voice holds up. I had the delight of presenting to 50 of our Australian colleagues this morning, and I guess with an Australian audience you do naturally find your voice ebbing upwards to almost a shouting pitch. So apologies if my voice gives up after about 7 or 8 minutes. But what I want to do is share with you a little bit more about our supply chain in the UK that services our business, the role that pork has within that there, and some of the successes that we've had in that respect over a number of years. But recognizing that I've been with McDonald's for 3 years, I guess many of you were or are in a position that I was in 3 years ago, which is you're familiar with the Golden Arches. You might have even been to one of our restaurants. I'm getting a nod, so I've got at least one customer here. You might have even had a favorite menu item. But you may not be that familiar with how we operate as a business. It's not something that we actively share. It's not something that we actively shout about. So I'd like to take a few minutes to just put in context our business and then lead into our pork supply chain. So our global business, we operate in a little over 120 countries, is almost reaching pension age. It's 62 years since we opened our very first restaurant in Illinois, in Des Moines, in Illinois, and that was 62 years ago in total. And if you fast track now to this year, we've got 30,000 restaurants in 120 countries. We employ collectively across the globe a little over 3 million colleagues in total. And we serve each and every day across the globe 60 million customers. That's a pretty staggering number. Closer to home here in the UK, we're a younger business. We opened our very first restaurant in Woolwich in the South Bank 43 years ago. And for that one restaurant, our needs were relatively simple. We opened there ordering just half a ton of pork for that first year of operation, 4 tons of beef, and just 25 tons of potatoes. And again, fast tracking to today, that one restaurant 43 years later has now grown into 1,280 restaurants. And this year we'll buy, I'm glad to say, a little bit more than half a ton of pork, 13,500 tons of pork, 42,000 tons of beef, and a pretty staggering 300,000 tons of British potatoes. Fries are pretty popular on our menu. So we've been on a 40-year or thereabouts journey as a business here in the UK. And I guess one of the most important stages of that journey over those 40 years was actually a low point for us as a business, and quite a pivotal low point. 10 years ago, as a business, we weren't in a great place. We got a sharp wake-up call from our customers who told us that the food that we were serving on our menu wasn't always up to scratch. It wasn't delivering to them in terms of quality, nutrition, and the way that we sourced our product through our supply chain. And 10 years ago, we fell out of step with our expectations, and they voted with their feet, their wallets, and they didn't visit our restaurants. And on an occasion like that, in a low point, inevitably you challenge yourself on what you need to do differently. And we realized we had to fundamentally change as a business. We had to listen more to our customers and give them reasons to trust us, and most importantly, to come to our restaurants for the food that we serve. 10 years ago, we did serve British and Irish beef, but we never told anybody about it. So we've started advertising and engaging with people around that. We added choice to our menu, adding porridge, wraps, fresh coffee, and British organic milk. And we worked with our suppliers from that low point to improve the quality of our ingredients and how we go about sourcing them. And these are just a few of the changes that we embarked on, but all of them, each and every one, was as a result of spending time listening to our customers and, most importantly, acting upon their needs. And again, if you fast forward to where we are 11 years later after that low point, we've now had 11 years of consecutive growth. That's 44 quarters of like-for-like growth. And it's something we're incredibly proud of, but with pride comes responsibility, because we employ over 115,000 colleagues across our restaurants here in the UK. We serve 3.75 million customers each and every day. Few other businesses like ours have got the reach, the touch, the feel into so many households across the UK. And actually, in effect, 90% of households across the UK will visit a McDonald's restaurant at some stage this year. We sell more cups of coffee than Starbucks. We buy more chicken than KFC. And as a result, we have a very strong affinity and commitment to British agriculture. Again, it's because our customers tell us that they love locally sourced product. So well over 60% of the food that my team buy, that we serve in our restaurants, is bought from British farmers. And I guess this is often the question against that level of success that I get asked. And the reality is that there's no one single thing. There's a multitude of elements and factors. Yeah, it's the focus that we put on the quality of our food, the service in our restaurants. It's how we continue to bring innovation onto our menu. It's the almost £750 million we've spent refurbishing our restaurants over the last 2 years, bringing digital ordering and being able to get served at your table in our restaurants. But for me, from a supply chain perspective, there's two distinct things that really stand out. And that is our focus upon partnership and building trust. So what do I mean by building trust? Well, like any business, each of our functions, each of our departments have individual targets, whether it's the guys and girls in restaurant about speed of service, whether it's the guys in accounts around addressing those invoice queries as quickly as possible. But the one thing that binds us all together in our business is building trust and affinity. We serve, as I said, 3.7 million customers each day, and that means that, yes, we're liked by many of them, but for a large number of them, we're not loved, and they have choices of other restaurants that they can go to. So that's why we focus upon building trust, and that focus upon building trust allows us to play to our strengths. And one of those strengths is drawing upon the great partnerships that we have with our farmers and our suppliers. Now, I said earlier, I've been with the business for 3 years. For the previous 20 years, I've worked in the supermarket industry and the food industry, and every single one of those businesses has talked about the importance of supplier partnership. It's almost a bit of a hackneyed term. But I can genuinely say 3 years into McDonald's, the approach that we've got to the partnerships with our suppliers and farmers is fundamentally different. We surround ourselves with the best suppliers, taking a long-term approach, and we grow through investment rather than cost cutting. And it might seem like a bit of an odd concept, but we actively want our suppliers, our farmers to be prosperous and financially successful. We don't flip-flop between suppliers. We don't e-auction every 6 or every 12 months. We've worked with the same beef supplier for the last 43 years, the same potato supplier for 35 years, and the same pork supplier for almost 20 years here in the UK. So we're incredibly proud of the supply chain that we've built together with our supplier partners. But we know that even the strongest partnerships out there need to focus on continuous improvement, because we know our suppliers have options, and we need to earn that position as being a number one customer and a customer of choice to our suppliers. And the reason for that is this statement, because genuinely, if we're to succeed as a business, We need to be the business our suppliers want to contribute their best ideas to, the business they want to go the extra mile for, because unlike any other business I've come across, we rely upon our suppliers more than anybody else. And it's a reality which underpins why we genuinely focus on that point of partnership. Because if our suppliers don't feel recognised, rewarded, fulfilled or engaged, we in the UK, we don't have a business. It's genuinely as simple as that. And let me give you an example going back to my old days in the supermarkets, because I was indulged, arguably. You have a supermarket with an average of 30, 35,000 SKUs in each of those, or lines, products in each of those supermarkets. And if there was an availability issue, the customer would stand in front of the fixture and they would groan and they would probably chew on a nettle for a minute, but more often than not, they'd buy the product that was next to the gap. And we don't have that indulgence because despite the scale of our business, we only source 200 individual ingredients for our business. Now, we spend a lot, we buy a lot of each of those individual 200 ingredients. But on those 200, the cost of failure, if we don't have the right relationship, the right support from our suppliers, is just unimaginable. If there's a harvest failure, as there was arguably earlier this year with iceberg lettuce, and if product availability is tight, if the farmer chooses to redirect that product elsewhere, we're not able to serve up Big Macs. And that's just unimaginable. That 28 grams of iceberg lettuce that goes in, it means we don't have iceberg. It means that we don't have Big Macs for the hundreds of thousands of customers that come in to buy that iconic product each day. Now, thankfully, touch wood, and certainly under my stewardship, those occasions don't arise. But in fairness, they don't arise because of the focus that we put on our partnerships and the reliance that we have on our suppliers. And we've learned that successful suppliers, confident in their long-term relationships with us, feel empowered and willing and able to invest for the future. And it's only with the support and in that context that we've been able to make some of our biggest moves to respond to our customers' needs. Customers want us to support British and British farmers, so we moved all of our fries 18 months ago to being sourced from only British farmers. Our customers want us to improve and play a role in improving animal welfare, so we've become one of the biggest supporters of RSPCA assured standards. And we've moved all of our chicken to higher welfare enriched standard. And our customers want us to be responsible for the environment. So all of the vehicles that you see out there with the golden arches on the side, all of them are powered by the used cooking oil that we draw from our restaurants. And this has been a journey over the last 10 years, but critical within that is working with the best suppliers, supported by long-term partnerships, understanding our customer needs, and delivering great solutions to them. And a great example for me that hopefully illustrates the point is a TV ad that we ran last year, and we call it The Tree.
Trees. They're easy to overlook. Even the big ones. Somehow shrinking into the background of life. But not everyone sees them that way. To some, a tree is shade, protection, shelter. So some, like Joe, can be found planting a tree or two. He cares that his hens have a bit of cover. We care about dealing with Joe. And all the British and Irish farmers like him. So much about the ingredients they supply us with, including of course all the free range eggs we cook.
So filmed on a real farm, and that is genuinely a real farmer with real free-range hens and free-range eggs. It gave our customers an insight into something they told us was important to them, which is the role that we can play in demonstrating the contribution that we're making to animal welfare and the environment. And I never think that whenever we first started the research into canopy cover on our free-range egg farms, that anybody would have ever anticipated that 4 or 5 years later, it would play a role in how we would do TV adverts and how we would talk to our customers. But again, listening to customers, working with our suppliers, investing in the right level of research to provide a solution is giving us part of our success. And the Lakes, the company that we work with for our free-range eggs from Cumbria, epitomise the effectiveness of what our strategic approach is. Doing the basics really well, focusing upon continuous improvement, and finally identifying those big steps to differentiate our brand. And this approach equally applies to our pork supply chain. It was only in 1982 that we first began serving breakfast on our menu. Breakfast out of the home then was, I guess, a little bit of a treat, an occasional treat. And our buying requirement then was fairly negligible. But today, the fast pace and the changing nature of customers' lives mean that grabbing breakfast is pretty much a norm for many of us. And this year, as I mentioned, we're on track to purchase 14,000 tonnes of British pork and 200 million half rashers of bacon for our menu. And our need for pork stretches beyond our breakfast menu. Those half rashers are now an integral part of the promotional burgers that we bring onto our menu on a rotational basis each and every month. And when we talk to customers, when we review the consumer taste scores, the highest scores are always for products that have got bacon on them. You'll be glad to hear. So doing the basics well, we've worked with Tulip, as I said, for almost 20 years here in the UK, and they supply the pork that we make into our breakfast patties and the half rashers that we serve on those promotional burgers. And they share that passion that we've got for focusing upon the basics and getting them right. And a good example of that and how it's driven success for us is, understandably, they spend a lot of time in our restaurants following their product through the supply chain. And what they saw was customers complaining that their favourite promotional burger didn't have the bacon in it. That's a big deal if you're one of those customers. And what they identified was relatively simple, actually, when you reflect on it. We serve a half rasher, it's put into a promotional burger, and sometimes you can't see it. So customers assume that they've been given a duff deal, they haven't got the bacon within the burger. But that's a basic that matters when you've got 3.7 million customers a day. So Tulip invested and changed our product quite simply to a full rasher, placed in the middle, draped across the burger so that you can see it immediately. And we've had that in situ for the last 3 months, and we haven't had a single complaint. And that's focusing upon a basic that really matters for customers. But with customers' expectations evolving, doing the basics isn't always enough. So that's why we're focused upon this point of continuous improvement. And what does that look like for pork? Well, the British streaky bacon that we serve on our menu has served us really well. And it's great to handle. It's a frozen product, so we get a nice long shelf life, no waste. But it's packed by weight, meaning that the guys and girls in restaurant aren't always sure how much is in each pack. And because it's frozen, it needs to be defrosted and then decanted in our kitchen, all requiring time and effort. But with one of those working sessions that we had with Tulip, we challenged ourselves how it could be improved. The quality, the customer experience, the preparation effort, and the complexity in restaurant, and ultimately to be able to serve it up to customers. And in the spirit of continuous improvement, we wanted to understand what the benefits would be removing it from the freezing process and supplying a chilled product. Now, it certainly sounded simple to me. You just turn down the dial from frozen to chilled, but as many of you will appreciate, it's a lot more complex and it's got significant implications, whether it be in our distribution centre, changing the delivery system, or changing every single process that involves bacon in our restaurants. But Tulip had the bit, or the half rasher if you want, between their teeth, and they were focused upon getting the right solution. And we've now got a brand new cooking facility down in Bodmin dedicated to ourselves, a £6 million investment with automated picking. And what we've got is a higher quality chilled product, automated picking, so that means that it's a highly accurate piece count, and it means that we have dressing table ready packaging that doesn't have to be defrosted, decanted, it just goes straight on to the dressing table, making it so much easier for our colleagues in restaurant. And the final step, equally applicable to our pork supply chain, is those big steps, because we're restless in our approach. And sometimes, as I said, delivering neither the basics or the continuous improvement opportunities is always going to suffice. We did a piece of research in 2013 with our customers, and they told us that they rank price, animal welfare, and traceability as being the top 3 critical and most sensitive factors whenever it came to their food decision-making process. And nearly 3/4 of our customers told us that they prefer to buy food that's been produced from farms with high standards of animal welfare in place. Feedback from McDonald's customers that you arguably never would have expected 10 years ago, but this is what's in their vocabulary at the moment. And we share that passion for sourcing products from a higher welfare standard. It's good for the consumer, good for business, good for our farmers. So working side by side with our partners, we set out to switch our entire pork supply chain based upon that feedback to being RSPCA assured. And we know that farming to higher welfare standards takes investment, confidence, dedication. But we were delighted that that decision that we made in 2013, we were able to implement almost immediately. And we became the first high street restaurant to move to 100% RSPCA assured pork from British farms. And it was and it is still, one of the biggest sourcing moves that we've made in the UK in our business here. And it's no coincidence that as a result of making that move, we've seen our pork business increase by 30%. So looking ahead, what does the future look like? We know that our customers will continue to want to know more about the food they eat and serve to their families. And that's why we'll continue to talk openly about the honest, true facts of our supply chain. We've invested in the latest immersive video technology to put customers directly into our supply chain, into the farms that supply us through our Food Steps campaign. And I know a number of you have taken the opportunity to try out the VR headsets in the room next door, and if you haven't, please do take the opportunity too. But we must continue to provide customers with that great food that tastes great, which offers the highest level of animal welfare standards, traceability, and sustainability. But we need to do this in a way that continues to offer value for money. And thinking back to what Bruce shared, whatever happens with the ever-changing political landscape, one thing that I know is that our customers, irrespective of what goes on in the broader landscape, they'll continue to expect us to be sourcing the very best from British farming. And clearly, that's great news for all of us. Thank you very much.